Hey everyone, welcome to The New Populist. I'm Dave Brown, co-author of the book Black and White, How the Left is Destroying the Dream of Martin Luther King and Our Founding Fathers. If you want a right-leaning perspective on race relations from a person of color, me, go ahead and pick it up. It's on Amazon and there is a link in the description. And of course, if you are new to this channel, please share, like, and subscribe. It is much appreciated. Critical race theory. Now, we've all seen the angry parents confronting their school boards and asking why their children are being taught critical race theory. And people sort of have a loose definition or idea of what it is. So I wanted to go into more depth. And originally I had done a longer video and I looked back at it and I realized, it was just a little bit too nebulous, a little confusing. So I thought I would make a series of videos that would break down critical race theory and focus in on different aspects of it. And so in this first video, I'm going to discuss what critical race theory is and where it came from. Let's get into it. To better understand what critical race theory is, it's helpful to first go back and look at the history of where it came from. Now, back in the early 1970s, there were a handful of legal scholars, activists, writers, and professors who were examining the progress made by the civil rights era in the 1960s. Now, in their mind, the progress made hadn't gone far enough and in fact had stalled out and started to move into reverse. So they got together and started brainstorming, and collectively they came up with the idea of critical race theory. Now, there are several people who are credited as being founders of critical race theory, but I want to focus in on two in particular, Derek Bell and Richard Delgado. Now, Richard Delgado actually wrote a book in 1995 called Critical Race Theory: An Introduction. In this book, he breaks down what critical race theory is and all the different aspects that make up this movement. So let's first go and look at his definition of critical race theory. And he says here, the critical race theory movement is a collection of activists and scholars interested in studying and transforming the relationship among race, racism, and power. Now, that's pretty much a recap of what I discussed earlier about these activists getting together to re-examine race issues. But he continues further. He says here, unlike traditional civil rights, which embraces incrementalism and step-by-step progress, critical race theory questions the very foundations of the liberal order, including equality theory, legal reasoning, Enlightenment rationalism, and neutral principles of constitutional law. There is a lot to unpack here. The first thing that really jumps out at me is that critical race theory differentiates itself from traditional civil rights. So this is not your continuation of Martin Luther King. As it says here, they question the very foundation of the liberal order, and I cannot stress enough just how radical that is. It goes on to say it also questions Enlightenment rationalism and legal reasoning, the things we take for granted that undergird Western civilization. Critical race theory questions, and in some cases, harshly critiques. So if anyone says that this is not a radical philosophy, either they don't know what they're talking about or they are lying to you. Delgado goes on to describe the basic tenets of critical race theory, and there are three that he highlights. The first one is ordinariness, and that means that racism is pervasive in our society. It's not an aberration, it's commonplace, and in this context, it means that racism is also hard to address, that laws that are colorblind, for example, only address or remedy the racism that is most obvious, and that more deep-seated racism is not fixed by simply having laws that are neutral and colorblind. The second one is that race is a social construct that is created and manipulated by society for different reasons, obviously for nefarious reasons. And the third one is the idea of interest convergence. And this is actually a concept created by Derek Bell. And the basic gist of this is that the only time there is an action that improves a lot of black people in the system, it's because it also helps out white people. So there is a self-interest by white folk to push a law that would, on the surface, seem to be in the interest of black people. And his example is the Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 that desegregated schools in the South. And according to Derek Bell, this actually worked against the interest of black people and was only done because it helped out white people. So anything that's done in this country within the system that currently exists that seems to help black people, really, according to critical race theorists, is self-serving and is done in the interest of whites. If as a white person you marched at Selma or have worked to improve the civil rights of black people, well, according to critical race theory, you were being selfish. It was not done out of any altruism. It was self-serving and you were selfishly motivated. So it's quite a cynical viewpoint of the world. I will give him this. When he came up with this theory, it was 1980, and we were only, 10 years removed from the civil rights era. And I think the next 30 years really showed that incrementalism was working. I just recall back to the 2000s, and I can't remember race being a big deal. Now, maybe it was because we were so focused on terrorism and the Iraq invasion, but things were seemingly better. And then in 2008, Barack Obama was elected, and we think that we reached this grand pinnacle of improving race relations in this country. And instead, everything seemed to get worse, starting with Black Lives Matter in 2013 or 2012. So it's really weird to see how things have played out, and that even when we have a black president, it's after that point where critical race theory really starts to pick up and take off. And that even with a minority in the White House as president, and even now as vice president, to them, the system is still structurally racist, is still corrupt, and it still works against the interest of black people. And I think that's where a lot of us are frustrated. We've seen a system now that works so hard to cater toward people of color, whether it's in academia or in Hollywood, in the business world. All the doors are open, and yet we have critical race theory being taught to third and fourth graders in 2021 as if racism was still so pervasive that it needed to be taught to these small children. And that's where we on the right are frustrated and pushing back, and that's why we see these angry parents in front of these school boards. And I hope with this information you have a better idea of what critical race theory is, so that if you're standing in front of a school board and they say critical race theory is not a big deal, it's not radical, well, you have a better idea of what it is, and you can put it to them and challenge them and see what happens. So I hope this information is useful for you, and I'm going to do more videos on critical race theory because it's a very complicated topic. It goes into a lot of deeper issues, so look out in the future for those videos. And of course, if you're new to this channel again, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.